Hello and welcome to Media MD, your fortnightly dose of media that you have somehow missed. I'm Reuben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we're back to our fortnightly schedule, which if you don't know why we're doing that, you should go back and listen to last fortnight's episode. God, that's going to take some time to get used to.
We made it almost a minute.
But I guess if you didn't listen to last fortnight's episode, the quick summary is we're going back to our fortnightly schedule, which means last fortnight I recommended you, Elliot, and you, audience, a movie called Prisoners, directed by Denis Villneuve.
Yeah.
You don't need to go back and listen to it if you don't want to. We'll talk about it right here, right now.
Yep.
That's your cue, Elliot.
And
you're on.
Yes, that's my cue. Okay. So usually we do a plot summary here, but I had a bit of trouble putting together a plot summary for this movie because it either felt way too detailed or it's so kind of high level that it's kind of pointless because it's not going to make any sense if you haven't seen the movie anyway. It's basically Hugh Jackman is a guy, and his daughter and her best friend get sort of kidnapped, and somehow Hugh Jackman is still the bad guy. Well,
I think Hugh Jackman's character, I think his name is Kellen Dover. His character does a lot of bad things. So his character kind of finds this suspect that he wholeheartedly believes is responsible for the disappearance of these two girls, and then abducts him and starts torturing him to try and torture the information of where the two girls are out of him, which is not a great thing to do for a human being.
As I was sort of watching this movie, part of me was thinking that like the genesis for this film was like a bunch of people sitting down together, and it was like, how could we make a movie about a guy whose daughter gets kidnapped and he's still the bad guy? Because he gets pretty close to sort of taking that role. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's one of those movies where, everyone's sort of a character. There's not really good guys and bad guys, but they're certainly not great people for the.
There's really only one. There's one clear-cut villain in the movie, and they only really shot for about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Once for one small scene, and then at the very end when everything is kind of falling into place.
Yeah. But anyway, so I guess the plot summary would be, Hugh Jackman is torturing this suspect who, he's convinced, but it doesn't really seem that likely that they did it. And then Jake Gyllenhaal is being a detective and actually solving the case and not just torturing people.
As any good detective should.
And then towards the end, they both kind of solve it roughly at the same time. Hugh Jackman wins by a little bit, but he's unsuccessful at doing anything about it. So Jake Gyllenhaal actually saves the day.
Yeah. And so it's a movie something that I quite like about this movie actually is we as the audience are only ever as sure of what's going on as Hugh Jackman's character or the detective for most of the part.
No, definitely. It's not one of those films where you know, because I wasn't even able to pick it. Like, probably about 10 times throughout the movie, I was like, no, it's that person, or it's early in the film, there's the dead guy they find under the priest's house, and for a long time I suspected that it was the priest or that guy's like real son. I was very confused, and it kept me as confused as the characters were. Yeah, which is a really difficult thing to do, really.
And it's something that works just to the strength of this movie because there are parts where his character will say something offhandedly that seems to indicate to both us, the audience, and to Hugh Jackman that he's definitely the killer. He says at one point, he says, "They only cried when I left them." He kind of whispers this to Hugh Jackman, and no one else hears it. And it's this strong piece of evidence that Hugh Jackman is sure that they've kidnapped the girls. Or the character's walking his dog and starts whistling or singing "Jingle Bells, Batman Smells," which one of the girls was singing when they went missing, just before they went missing.
Yeah.
And so we as the audience we're following Hugh Jackman's train of thought, oh, this is definitely the guy. And then we're following his kind of as the doubt creeps into our mind as the audience, the doubt is also obviously creeping into Hugh Jackman's mind. And so it's very much asking us as the audience to kind of buy into what Hugh Jackman is doing. And it plays with the kind of role of putting the audience in this situation in a really interesting way, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, because obviously there's the whole thing where, like, even if he was right and it was that kid, like, what he did was still not okay.
Yeah. He still obviously crossed a line so much.
But
the actor is Paul Dano, by the way. I just looked it up. That's what I was thinking of. Paul Dano, who plays the suspect.
Yeah. I mean, the other, like, I was actually really fascinated by, so one of the things, like, Hugh Jackman very early on after he kidnaps his kid is he goes and gets the dad of the other missing girl who's, like, one of his friends. And basically, like, peer pressures this dude into helping him torture the kid.
Yeah. Into going along with the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and it's so painful to watch this guy who's clearly uncomfortable and is basically trying to figure out how he can get out of it without pissing Hugh Jackman off, because it's pretty clear he's not a guy you want to get on the wrong side of. Like, case in point.
It's interesting because I think to an extent also this other character is meant to be a bit of an audience surrogate, right? Where
a little bit.
His daughter is missing, and so Hugh Jackman's character is understandable what he's doing, but is a villain, clearly, is a bad dude.
Yeah.
Driven by the love of his family, sure, but still crosses a line that we as audience members know that you shouldn't cross.
Yeah.
But then this other character is like kind of brought in, and his daughter's also missing, and so he goes along with it, kind of coerced, kind of not coerced, kind of like,
well, it's like,
you know?
He has to be sold on it, and he's not comfortable with it, but also his daughter's missing, so it's like it's easier to sort of push him over the edge a bit, is the impression I got.
Yeah, and that's why I really like the construction of this movie, is you get so, I don't know, as the audience, you kind of just feel gross for buying into Hugh Jackman's point of view a bit.
Yeah. And they do such a good job of establishing Hugh Jackman, like, right at the start. Like, the movie opens with him sort of saying the Lord's Prayer as he shoots a deer, or gets his son to shoot the deer. And then on the drive home, he just, starts spouting all of this, like, libertarian survivalist stuff. So it, like, immediately establishes him as sort of somebody who has a distrust for authority and bureaucracy, and is like, a do-it-yourself kind of guy.
Yeah, and also kind of establishes, he shoots this animal, and he's teaching his son to hunt, and his son is uncomfortable with this,
Yeah.
And then there's the other parts where Hugh Jackman has like a basement workshop with a bunch of power tools and stuff, and he's very,
like,
rightfully guarded about letting the kids down there because it's dangerous, but it kind of sets him up as this kind of, I don't know, not psychopathic, but like definitely violent tendency kind of guy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. A bit of a chaotic factor in some ways. Out for him and his, first and foremost, is sort of one of the things they address as well about his character. I thought it was really interesting. I was a little disappointed his wife, or the mother, didn't get that much screen time, because she was kind of fascinating. Like, she kind of, had a complete meltdown once their daughter got taken. But I was interested in her because it was pretty clear that what she liked about Hugh Jackman's character was she was clearly somebody who felt vulnerable a lot of the time, and he made her feel safe because of how, sort of do everything himself-y he was.
Yeah, and he's this kind of he's this handyman kind of machismo type, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he was always like, "Oh, I'll protect you," and blah blah blah, because that's his whole sort of thing. And that whole concept was shattered for her when the daughter got taken, and it would have been interesting to see a bit more on how she was actually coping with all that, because she didn't really get much time on the screen in the end.
Yeah, I think it's probably a fair criticism of this movie to say that it's a character study of Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal's characters more than anything, and so the wife's relevance is, to be there as the humanizing factor for Hugh Jackman. And I think she delivers a line at some point when she's kind of mid breakdown to him that's something like, "You said you were going to protect us,"
Yeah.
and this is clearly like a driving point for Hugh Jackman. Like, oh, I've failed. I need to make this right myself. If the detective isn't going to do enough for it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas to me, that line just made me more interested in her and like what her psychology was and how she was dealing. And yeah, anyway. But no, like overall, the character study stuff was really good. I liked Jake Gyllenhaal's character as well. We haven't really talked about him because he's pretty much like almost a separate storyline. Really. I mean, he they overlap, but he's got all his own stuff happening. But like his, detectiving was really fun to watch, and how he operates with everyone, because he was like a really good detective, but having to deal with difficult people like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of one of my other favorite movies, Zodiac, where Jake Gyllenhaal plays not a detective but a reporter who's trying to track down this serial killer, and Jake Gyllenhaal just plays this character of like figuring out clues and going to talk to witnesses, and he plays this kind of cop character so well. This is one of the movies that really makes me fall in love with him as an actor. It's just how well he plays this role.
So it was funny. I had a little bit of the opposite sort of thing. I watched Nightcrawler recently, and that was the only film I'd seen with him in it recently. And so it took me about 15 minutes into the film before I could shake the image of him as like a creepy serial killer, because he did such a good job in Nightcrawler that it actually stuck with me for a fair segment of this film.
Well, I guess that's the mark of a good actor, right?
Yeah.
Now we got to see what it's like, and he's the villain in the next Spider-Man movie, so that's going to be interesting to say the least. Yeah, he's playing, I don't know who he's playing, Mysterio maybe? Anyway, look, enough Spider-Man talk, Elliot, come on.
Well, so I just want to say, because the other thing that I think defines this film, so I've seen Sicario and Arrival as well, and they're both, or all three of them are just very tense films. Like you kind of like, once the movie's over, there's just this sense of, I can finally relax now. All three of them sort of keep you. He does a very good job of just sort of never quite letting your tension go. And in particular, I noticed in this film, he'd cut between scenes and just have like a really long sort of still shot of a house or the forest or something, and the camera would like maybe zoom or pan like a little bit, and there'd just be like this sort of tense music underneath it, and you're just thinking, oh shit, what's about to happen? And then it was just kind of a normal scene, but just sort of between every scene he made sure that he didn't let you relax.
you never quite get back down to zero. Yeah. It's something that I really like about him as a director. I think with this movie and with Sicario, they're such kind of, I don't know if bleak is the right word, but I'm going to use it, like bleak kind of dour stories. And so the fact that they're tense makes so much sense. And then Arrival is like, it's tense, but it's this completely different kind of tone. But he still manages to keep this suspense and tension so finely tuned. It's not always ratcheted up, but it comes in perfect kind of waves to keep you engaged. I think it's
exactly. It's not too intense. Like it's not sort of overloading you, but it never lets you drop too far down. Like he always keeps you, somewhere above zero.
Yeah, definitely. It's what do you think of the look of the movie? Because that's something else I find always enjoyable about Denis Villneuve movies is they always just manage to look beautiful.
Yeah, he did a great job. There's one scene where it transitions from raining to snowing. It was really well shot. In fact, I think I looked it up afterwards, and the movie won the Academy Award for cinematography in the year it came out, and that. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, and it makes sense if it did. It was really well shot.
And if it didn't, it's an outrage.
There were lots of great sort of things, and the transition to sort of, as the movie was going, things kept getting more and more frozen and snowy, and that sort of transition, I'm only just realizing now, was sort of happening in the background and kind of making things, because one of the recurring themes in the film is people constantly updating you on how long the girls have been missing and how bad that is for the chances of their survival.
Yeah, I think it's a movie that does really well with its tones and with its themes. It's not telling too grand of a story, but it's telling a story that fits very neatly within its box, and it's just very well put together.
Yeah, definitely. I would say this was my favorite of the 3 movies that I've seen.
Of Sicario, Arrival, and this one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, Arrival was good up until the end. I hated the ending, but that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
And then Sicario, I remember I liked it, but I honestly don't remember that much about it, and it's been a few years now, so I can't talk about that one too concretely. But I remember liking it, but not as much as I really enjoyed this one.
Sicario 2 has just come out, except Denis Villneuve isn't attached, and from what I hear, it's turned it from a story about Emily Blunt being this female cop in a very macho, masculine drug enforcement squad to just an action movie, which is a bit weird. But whatever. Gotta milk the money out of it, I suppose.
One of those things where they just sort of completely missed the point of why the first one was successful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. So yeah, let's wrap it up then. Give me your overall thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this was really good. I enjoyed pretty much every minute of it, except there's 1 minute where Jake Gyllenhaal was driving with a head wound to save the girl. That scene lost me, because it was a bit ridiculous that they didn't crash and die. But apart from that, I loved the rest of the movie. So that was one bad minute out of 150 minutes. That's pretty good.
So that's 149 out of 150.
149 out of 50. We're changing the scale this year. That's another format
It's minutes
change.
based.
No, so I'd give this one a 9 or a 9.5. It's hard to do movies sometimes for me. I don't know. Also, I noticed last year I gave Hunt for the Wilder People a 7 or a 7.5, and I'd only watched it the night before, and then sitting on it a month later, I was like, nah, that was better than that. So I'm tentatively giving this one a 9, but I find often with these movies I want to come back to it a few weeks later and sort of reevaluate it, depending on how it sticks with you. So I'll say 9 for now. But,
right.
Yeah,
9 out of 10. I think it's worth pointing out that one of his other movies, Enemy, that we haven't talked about, also starring Jake Gyllenhaal, is also a pretty great movie. I didn't like it as much as Prisoners, but if you did like Prisoners, maybe you should check out Enemy. It's a bit of a weird one. It's very kind of, I would call it a bit, not avant-garde, but definitely edging into this kind of a movie that needs to be interpreted kind of thing.
Okay.
But it's a fun movie, very well acted, and obviously masterful work of tension. But yeah, I guess 9 out of 10 Prisoners. We'll leave it there. Now, Elliot, new format. That means we need to do our prescription for next fortnight. I almost said week again.
So that's me, and this week I'm bringing everyone the X-Files. It's a little known show. I thought I'd keep up the sort of pseudo tradition I have going of opening up with science fiction TV shows.
I'm sure the audience appreciates it.
Well, I mean, if they're still here by now, then they can't hate it.
Fair.
Otherwise, they would have left already. So obviously, I mean, I don't really need to give you the basics of the X-Files. I think it's permeated pop culture enough that you understand the general idea.
It's like the X-Men, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, this is really the granddaddy of the whole monster of the week with an overarching plot genre. I mean, things like Fringe and Supernatural.
Buffy, presumably.
Yeah, Buffy. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Friends in a way. Friends sort of redefined the whole sitcom genre, and X-Files did the same thing with, sort of supernatural-based sci-fi stuff. But I mean, I'd say unlike Friends, X-Files has aged pretty well. I only got into it three or 4 years ago, and I sort of marathoned the whole thing. I wouldn't say I'm driven by nostalgia. This is something I watched after shows like Fringe and Supernatural, and I still enjoyed it. It's definitely it's strongest at the start. This is actually kind of like most of these shows, like Supernatural and Fringe, for example, start off really strong and then slowly deteriorate.
I think that's when their concept is the strongest, right?
Yeah, exactly. And X-Files is kind of aided by the fact that it came first in that regard. So its sort of concept is just the whole concept of Monster of the Week. So it's got a lot more freedom, whereas things like Supernatural and Fringe kind of had to find a niche to justify existing after X-Files. X-Files gets to do basically whatever it wants because it was first, and that freedom really helps all the various sort of Monster of the Week episodes really stand out and have variety.
Okay. So just because you hear about X-Files a lot, obviously it's quite in the pop culture eye, in the zeitgeist. But I don't think I hear a lot about why people like it beyond the fact that, it's this great show from however many years ago, you should check it out. So what is it about it that when you found it or when you started it 3 years ago really kind of grabbed you?
Yeah, so definitely, like, one of the driving things, it's a show that's really defined by its two main characters, like Mulder and Scully. Their sort of dynamic is just so simple and fun to watch. So Scully's this, scientist who's a skeptic, and Mulder believes in just about everything. And so it's sort of every episode is has these undertones of those two sort of fighting between, is this a scientific thing? Is this supernatural? It's almost always supernatural because it's X-Files. But it's definitely those two characters drive it a lot. It's just it's well written. I guess like it's almost every episode, especially from the first few seasons, is just just great to watch. I guess like I went and rewatched the pilot for this, and I'm probably going to end up watching a bit more over the next 2 weeks now.
Well, let's see who can get through the most of it over the next 2 weeks.
No, that's not going to be a healthy competition. So I guess the only other thing I sort of wanted to bring up is the show was sort of revived a couple of years ago, and they started doing some more episodes. So as I said, the show kind of got really, really terrible towards the end of its run, and the new seasons kind of exemplify everything that was wrong with the Late Show, but also everything that was great with the original.
Okay.
Which is the overarching sort of mythology of the X-Files just completely went to shit after about seasons four or so.
Yeah.
But the Monster of the Week episodes stay quality, and so it's actually the Monster of the Week episodes in these new seasons are fantastic, and there's really one in particular that I thought towards the end of the 2 weeks it'd be worth you just sort of skipping ahead, because it'll give us something to talk about in terms of how the show jumped forward into the 21st century.
Okay. So which episode is it?
Yeah, so it's called Season 10, Episode 3. It's called Mulder and Scully Meet the Were-Monster. And it stars guest stars Rhys Darby and Kumail Nanjiani.
Oh, interesting. Good guest stars.
So it's a lighthearted comedy relief sort of episode, but it's absolutely fantastic. So I'd recommend everyone, sort of regardless of where you get up to, it's a very self-contained Monster of the Week episode. So I'd encourage you to just sort of jump ahead and give that one a watch, so we can talk about it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, all right. Let's do it. Okay, well, I guess that's...
That's me.
I guess that's us for the fortnight. So we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about the start of the X-Files and then that one specific episode. Remember to follow us on Twitter and Facebook if you want to interact with the show. If you'd like to help us out, you could also leave us a review on iTunes, which we would really appreciate. Our website, mediamdpodcast.com, has links to do all of those things I just mentioned, as well as links to our past episodes, past discussion threads, ways to contact us, and all of our previous clues for the Media MD ARG. You can help us figure out just who is Dr. MD and why his kid's so lost. Elliot, why don't you tell the listeners this fortnight's clue?
Fingernail.
And we will see you next fortnight.